but he'll be here shortly.
You like how I called him that before I hit record?
No proof of it unless you're on the call, right?
Exactly. Okay, we're good to start, guys.
So good morning, everyone. And I'm so excited for you guys to be here today. I really enjoy having Curtis and Debbie on these calls. They both coach teams and businesses, that are doing well over 75 to 100 million in production. So having them on these calls to give some feedback and some influence, to give us some great stuff that we can take with us. I was thinking yesterday, Curtis, Debbie, and I were speaking, and then Curtis and I got on another call later in the evening, and I wanted to kind of read a quote to you. Our potential is one thing. What we do with it is quite another, right? What we do it is quite another. There's this great author. Her name is Angela Duckworth. And if you haven't read her book, I encourage you to do it immediately. And it's called Grit. Because if I've been through a market crash, I'm not saying we're going to have a market crash, but right now is the time you need to get gritty. If you don't get gritty and hungry and motivated and really on point and be very task oriented, this may hurt you. I'm telling you right now, this may hurt you. The rates will go to, I sit right outside my door is a great lender. He's telling me he thinks that the mortgage rates may go over 7% by the end of the summer. Guys, get your buyers now, get your sellers a reality check. There you go. Thank you very much for that, Claire. It's right there. That's the one with Angela Duckworth, Grit. And I will tell you, what a wise young lady she is, an author, because there's so many, I get so many quotes out of there. There was another one I read. I learned a lesson I'd never forget. The lesson was that when you have setbacks and failures, you cannot overreact to them. Because when we overreact to the problem, we create more issues. We slow down, right? And right now is the perfect time to go into, this is the 4th and 5th job description of a realtor. And it's what I see most realtors failing at. And I'm sorry to say this, we are failing at this, not the customer. The customer is relying on us, writing contracts and going to closings. Do you understand how much negotiation is involved after you find that home to get that contract written purposefully and get to a closing? Because inspections get in the way, emotions get in the way. And if you're not doing what you need to do, you're telling that buyer you're not doing the best job for them. That's basically what you're doing. And it's not about you. It's about the buyer. If they're overpaying, it's not your problem. It's not for you to decide. Let the appraisers do it. If the buyer's willing to pay, they pay. So here's what I'm going to get into today. And thank you, Debbie, for being here. I know Curtis will be on shortly. There's a young man I spoke to the other day. He was so excited he got his first contract. He's with another broker. I don't know if he's on the call, but I'm not going to call him out on this. I said to another agent that set the call up with me with him, I said, it'll go dead within 10 days because he doesn't have support. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's asking us for every item and something's going to go bad. 2 days. He's all upset. Doesn't know where to go, doesn't know where to turn. And the contract is dead. Okay. So whether you're a seasoned agent, brand new agent, I think this is highly important. I want to go into the contract, the negotiations, and the negotiations through to the closings. You may learn something from this call. And trust me, anyone on the call who has had or is having huge success from contract to close, fantastic. By the way, if you're in the state of Florida, I highly recommend you use the FAR contract. If you're a listing agent, tell the buyer's agents they need to use a FAR contract. Learn it. Forget about the as is. It stops the buyer from canceling the contract. Okay. Look into that contract. I'm not going to go into details on it, but learn it. If you're working with your buyer, definitely do your as is. But if you're working with a seller, learn the FAR contract. Okay. Debbie, in your experiences and your coaching with your teams and your clients, when you go into the writing of a contract, what are some of the things that really are extremely important when going through that process? You find the home, you're writing the contract, the agents are writing the contract. What are some of the most important key items that you see out there with the teams and the agents that you coach, and that is a top necessity right now?
I think, the contract is important. But in most people's worlds, there are people they can call on with help with that. Tom, I think the most important thing is actually before you write the contract. What I see is agents don't do a good job of setting expectations of their buyers or sellers. If you do a good job of setting the expectation of what's going on in the market, writing the contract becomes easier. If I say to my sellers all the time, the offer isn't done until the fat lady sings, meaning until we're at closing, nothing's in stone, and we don't know whether the buyer is of sound mind and body. I keep the seller always prepared that things could go awry. Things are not done until it's done. All I can control is the seller and me. I don't have any control over the buyer unless I'm bringing it, the other agent and the buyer. And we're going to work with integrity, and I'm going to work to help you avoid the pitfalls. But if we do a good job of preparing both our buyers and sellers in advance of writing the contract becomes easy. And here's what I mean. Maybe they preview the contract before you start writing it. But when I start my relationship, I'm talking about the as is versus the FAR contract. I'm talking about inspections and what can happen during inspections. I'm talking about deadlines and when money has to be exchanged. I'm talking about the appraisal is a big deal, because if we don't appraise, we're not moving forward. I'm talking about that closing is probably not going to happen on the day that we think, and that we need to be prepared for what happens when it doesn't close, right? If it doesn't close. And if you talk with your buyer or seller about some of the sticking points, which is, when does money change hands? What happens during the inspection? If you're working with a buyer, what makes a good offer? Gosh, you're a zero money down. You do realize we're going to be at the bottom of the pile. I'm talking about that before we get to the writing of the contract, because if they have the expectations, then writing the contract becomes simpler. So certainly when money needs to exchange hands, certainly who pays for title and why that matters or actually doesn't matter, right? I very often will make the other party pay for title so they can negotiate it out of the contract, because I don't want to negotiate on the price. So I will choose that the other party pays title, and we don't really care, but my buyer knows that they understand that this is a negotiation strategy that we're throwing in there, because title's what, $1,500, $2,000 at the most. But if we're negotiating $5,000 on the contract, that's a big deal, right? $5,000 becomes a big deal. $2,000 becomes not. The closing date and all of these things I'm sharing, but I'm sharing with where we can negotiate, right? With a buyer, the longer the closing date may be less preferable to the seller. But if I've done a good job and talked to the agent and I find out what the seller wants, then that closing date, wow, this seller would prefer 6 weeks. This seller would prefer to be flexible because their kids are coming to help them and they don't know how long it's going to take. So it really is understanding the key points and then knowing how to talk about them before you actually get to writing the contract. That's the most important thing.
So Debbie, what I heard, and I always take notes on these calls. what I heard you say is at the very beginning, before writing the contract, setting the expectations, right? And that's part of probably doing the consultation, right? I think that most of us can probably relate to this, whether you want to admit it or not. We're always in a rush and we want to rush things through, but we're really not setting the expectations of what the process is. And one of the things that I thought of as you were speaking is, what contract, the as is versus the FAR, inspections, timelines, extensions, all that stuff there, right? Well, let's say we have several properties under contract, and each property has a different inspection date, a different timeline, a different whatever it may be. And I think that's where we all get kind of tied up in chaos because we don't have any leverage, right? So if somebody is doing more than 3 or 4 transactions a month, and it's very easy to forget about an inspection deadline or a appraisal deadline or financing deadline, that could be highly detrimental to the consumer financially, and it's our responsibility.
Yeah, Tom, 2 tips on that. First tip, hire transaction coordinator because their job is to look at the dates and keep that organized. Number 2, if that's not in your budget at the moment, although I don't think it's an expense, I think it's leverage, right? Because someone else, you're paying a very small fee, and usually only if it closes, there may be a small cancellation fee, but that's leverage that you don't pay unless you use the service. But the second tip, every time you get something under contract, open up your Google Calendar or whatever calendaring thing you use to keep track of your appointments and put the dates, but put the dates the day before. Like, don't put it on the date, put it 2 or 3 days before. If your appraisal deadline is the 10th, on the 7th, just put a note at the top of your calendar that says appraisal deadline for 123 Main Street is on the 10th. But put it on the 7th. Just go and get all the dates on your calendar. And then at 5 a.m. in the morning or at 6 a.m. in the morning, or make it an all-day event, that when you're opening and looking at your calendar, all the dates are there. And if you do it once it goes under agreement, then you don't have to be sitting with that uncomfortableness of where's the contract, what are the dates? Just put them on your calendar, get them all on there.
One of the things that I want to hear from Curtis on this here too, one of the things that I hear a lot of, and I always, when I'm working with agents, even some of the teams that I work with, I always tell them to do an offer letter to the agent, right? Of what the offer consists of, right? And all the documents that are included in the letter also, and it could be an email, right? It could be documented in an email. Here's all the addendums, letter, blah, blah, blah. And second, we have the lender contact the listing agent to reassure the agent that there's a great lender. They've already pulled credit. They checked assets and everything else. And those are the 2, I think those are the 2 critical items of submitting an offer with a listing agent to at least get it accepted, right? Showing your professionalism and your team involved with that. And if you do have a transaction coordinator, maybe even including their information in that email, by the way, here's an introduction to our transaction coordinator. She's a rock star. He's a rock star. And by the way, they follow up through this entire process, which will make your job and mine easier. Curtis, at the submittal part, because we know that so many agents get so mad at listing agents, and you work with a lot of listing agents also. What's the success of that preparation for their offer getting accepted and then moving towards the negotiations through everything else?
Sure. Well, I heard a few things there, and apologies for being late today. Technical difficulties on getting in the office. Just not in my wheelhouse. Opening door, unlocking door. I don't know. Anyway, I heard a few things there. Number one, calling the listing agent, backing up just to hear what Debbie said. Calling the listing agent, if the extent of our conversation and calling the listing agent is, hey, do you have any offers? Then don't call, because you know the answer to that question. So I think you really have to get in, do your best to get into relationship with that listing agent and find out how to create a win and dig as deep as you can on what the expectations of the seller may be, so that you can then go back, have the conversation with your buyer, and of course, properly structure your deal. Then the second thing I heard was, submitting, clearly outlined or defined what your contract looks like, right? In your email. That's what you were talking about, right? Here's the things we discussed, and and sort of spelling it out for them. Remember, if you're the listing agent, I'm sure many of you guys have taken listings in this market. You know what it's like to sit there and mess with 30 offers sitting in front of you. You're like, holy crap, I don't even know where to begin, right? So, taking that extra step on the other end of things, imagine what it's like for you when you had that listing and had 30 offers in front of you. Do your best then to spell it out. Not to mention, if you've had this incredible conversation up front, they're going to remember it. They're going to remember it. And now you've, gone the extra mile, and they're going to look at it as, wow, this agent's really got their stuff together. And then the other part that I heard in this, which was having the mortgage lender call. I'm coaching about 9 LOs right now, and that is exactly what our conversation was. In fact, going to the real estate agents that they're in business with and offering that as an additional, I guess you could say, tool in their tool belt or whatnot to help get your buyer under contract with that listing agent, or make that listing agent feel good about your deal and about your client, right? Because I was sick of hearing too much. Not that I came up with the idea, I certainly didn't, but I was sick of hearing from my LOs, we're getting beat by cash, we're getting beat by cash. And then I'm hearing from the agents that I'm coaching, I have a finance buyer and we're getting beat by cash. Like, that's what we kept hearing. And then what we found was that was not necessarily true. What was happening was, we weren't taking those extra steps, and, they weren't looking at it as, because if I'm the listing agent, right, is the cash offer the best offer? Is this financed offer the best offer? And we've all been down that road before, had deals fall apart and whatever else with financing. But when you've got a loan officer that is, a high caliber loan officer that can make that phone call, that's all up in your deal, that has taken it from pre-approval to pre-qualification, it is in essence a cash transaction, right? Because the only thing we're missing is an appraisal, maybe a couple of checks and balances through underwriting, and a title search, right, to make certain that everything's clean. So in essence, it is a cash transaction. So having that explained, not to mention for your loan officer, and this doesn't do you any good, but it gives your loan officer an opportunity for you to help them with their business and them get into a relationship with another real estate agent that they could then do business with. Just saying. So, I don't know if that answers your question, Tom, and yet I'm doing that.
No, it did, because a lot of stuff for what's happening now in our business world today in real estate is getting our offers accepted, even on the listing side.
Sure.
How do we take the best offer and how do we keep the best relationship, right? So I think it's expectations, the lender relationship. And by the way, that lender relationship, if they call that agent, they're going, holy cow, my lender doesn't call people. By the way, I just learned something, and it gives them more opportunity to get their offer to the top. And they're telling their seller, hey, their lender called me. I feel really good about this, right? So then they go under contract with the offer. And like Curtis said, sometimes the cash offer is not the best. I'm going to tell you right now, most cash buyers that I've ever worked with in my past, they'll make any offer to make it as presentable as possible, and they beat the crap out of the seller on an inspection. Seriously. They'll come back and say, yeah, I want $50,000 for all these items, or I'm walking. Now the seller's already prepared, ready to close, and all this stuff, and they feel like they got the strength. So don't necessarily put cash offers as the best offer. Sometimes that cash buyer can be the biggest headache of your life, in my opinion. So expectations, getting it on the contract, the letter from the call from the lender, and then what Debbie mentioned also, guys, which is really important, is yes, my buyer is willing to pay the title insurance policy and save your seller that cost. Instead of making the offer above list, you make their net higher by eliminating a cost for them. That was great. I love that. So think about that as you're going through. It's just a little bit of a mindset thing that helps the seller and the agent go, oh my gosh, they're going to pay your title policy. That puts more money in your pocket, right? So, all right. So now we're on the contract and we go through all of our inspections, negotiations. What's the number one negotiation tactic or expectations, Debbie and Curtis, moving from under contract to actually closing and walking them through their inspections, their appraisals, and not canceling? Because
Okay, say that one more time.
So a buyer puts a property on the contract, they want the property or they wouldn't have put the offer in, right? How do we pull them in through the whole entire process? Because we know emotion gets in the way, frustration gets in the way, and a lot of things get in the way. What's the best way to handle them and cradle them through the entire process to make sure that they don't cancel because there's no GFI in the kitchen, or it's got a federal panel box, whatever. So under contract to close, what's the best thing that we can do as agents to walk them through the emotions and make sure it goes to a successful closing where we don't have to start the process?
It's again, setting those expectations. What is an inspection for, right? What is that? And by the way, I'm not having that conversation after they're under contract. It may not be in my initial consultation, but during our conversations and while we're looking at properties, I am sharing with this. By the way, here's a really important tip. If you are working with someone you know personally, a buyer and seller, you better be working off a checklist, because when we work with people we know, we forget to go through the things. And those deals can be the most difficult deals because I forgot to set expectations because they're my friend. So you better have all these things on, cover what an inspection is and what it isn't. I always help them think about what if it was their home, right? Sellers get personally attacked when someone says there's no GFI in the kitchen and they're like, our home is beautiful. What do you mean you're telling me something is wrong with it, right? So setting those expectations that if it was your family moving into a home, would you want an unsafe outlet? No. Okay. If it was your home and you didn't know, I always remind them that the other people are trying to do the best thing for them, like we're doing the best thing for you. And it's not against them. The seller's decision is not, it may look like, to hurt the buyer, but they're trying to create the best win for them. And I always say my goal is to find the win-win. What can you live with and what can they live with? So it's about setting that expectation. It's about telling them that until the appraisal comes back, don't celebrate. I caution my people from celebrating the steps because it's just an unknown. And that way, when they all of a sudden need an extension, they're not going, but the movers are coming tomorrow, because we've already talked about that, right? And I don't let anyone else call my clients with bad news. I don't let the lender call. I don't let the Untitled call. I don't let anybody call. I want to call because I've talked to them about this, remember? So when their emotions get high, we've already talked about the stress of buying or selling a home. I can remind them and say, remember, we said our emotions were going to go high. Let's take a deep breath and let's think about the data, the details. I know this hurts your feelings. I know this is making you stressed. Let's just move towards, let's find a solution. And I love that part. because my people are usually in pretty good control because I've set good expectations.
So I'm 100%. So Tom, real quick, and
Yeah,
I might
no,
have
go.
to bounce, but I'm 100% with Debbie. Here's why. When running around the office and talking to the different agents, when their deals are about to go south, or if they are going to go south, Debbie or myself will tend to ask the agent a couple of questions about the agent's motivation, or excuse me, the buyer's motivation when purchase, or why are they purchasing, and or the seller for all that matter. We ask them if they had a conversation in depth about setting expectations, stuff. Here's what we find: they didn't. They were rushed. We're rushed in this market. We need to take a minute, slow down, and have these conversations. And what I find is that while we think we're communicating at a very high level, honestly, oftentimes we're not. In other words, we're speaking and they're not hearing. And so we need to really slow down and make certain, when we're getting ready to present offers, when we are setting these expectations with our buyers and our sellers, asking them, do you understand? Can you tell me what I just, having them repeat back to you what you just said, and really going through it. And so it's not just, I think we all know the expectations that we need to set. It's just, are we doing it effectively? And I don't know that we are oftentimes, because we're so rushed.
Yeah.
Did you talk about this? Oh, I think I did. Well, I'm not really sure. Yeah. I told him about that. Remember, we live this stuff and breathe this stuff every day, right? We talk real estate. We speak real estate. We think I don't want to say we think it's easy, but because we're in it all the time, it's like it's our thing, right? It's not theirs. It's not theirs. And the other thing is that, listen, they know they're entering this fascinating market. I'm not saying crazy. Crazy is not a good word. Don't say crazy. It is a fascinating and incredible market. They know that they're entering that. And they're already feeling uneasy about the whole thing. So it's up to us. And so I think we need to slow down, and we really need to make certain that while we are setting these expectations, we're really communicating with them, and that they do truly understand.
I love that. And here's some of the things that I've personally experienced through, helping my wife through some stuff and some of the agents in the area. Ego is a problem. Ego for the agents is a massive destruction for the consumer. And here's why I say that. So sometimes cash offers are not the best offers. And the reason I say that is, if that cash offer wins that bid, okay, now that seller will say, yeah, they want that. I don't care. We'll go back on the market. It's the realtor's responsibility to say, listen, if we went through all the offers, you decided to take this cash offer, now they want to renegotiate. If we go back on the market, when we go back on the market because a cash buyer backed out, we have to disclose what that is if it's a disclosable item. And then what ends up happening is we end up getting offers with more negotiations down from your price versus where it's at. So maybe we need to think about how we want to react to what this buyer's request is, because remember, this is the offer you wanted. Because that financing offer is going to be so appreciative, especially VAs, right? Because our veterans deserve every opportunity to get a property, and VA loans are fantastic for they're getting a loan, so why are we pushing them away when it could be the best opportunity? They appreciate what they're getting, and they're not going to give you the hardest time. So setting the expectation.
I gotta run. Yeah.
Go ahead.
We have an amazing program coming up. It's funny. Thank you, Tom, for referencing Grit. We have a 4.5 week program coming up in June. That's going to help you exactly, build a big pipeline so that you can not always be running around freaking out about where the next deal is coming from. We will get you the details on the next call, but I got to jump. I know Curtis is.
All right, thank you. I'm going to jump into it a little bit with them. So guys, the main purpose of this call wasn't to tell you how to write a contract, not tell you, it's basically a call on best practices to walk through, under contract to close. So all that work that you do, and the thing that I kept hearing more and more of that we're not bringing to the table is expectations and leverage. And Curtis and Debbie, George and I both reached out to them about 3 months ago. And because they're ex-Bold coaches, I'm not sure if you guys know what a Bold coach is, but they're top-notch coaches that coach thousands of people in 1 year alone, okay? And they put a coaching program together to build $100,000 pipeline within a 90-day period. And they're gonna be rolling that out, not just for EXP, but they're gonna be rolling that out, and we're gonna get a first look at that. So I want you to, they'll be talking about it next week on a call. So if it's something that you're interested in, you're not paying for a coach, you're paying for a program that has two top-notch coaches that you're going to be in front of for a good amount of time on a monthly basis. So with that being said, I want to open it up, and I would love to hear, as a mastermind, what you found the best success of submitting an offer, submitting an offer and getting your buyer's offers accepted, listing agents. What is the best way for buyer's agents to get offers accepted with you, right? Okay. Liz, you got your hand up quickly.
Hey guys, good morning. So yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand with Curtis and Debbie were saying, and Tom, for me as a listing agent, when I'm looking at offers, I want to make sure that when you're submitting an offer, you're outlining it in an email, because as a buyer's agent, this is what I do for my people. I want to make sure that I have all the documents. I want to have a fully, a clean contract that is not missing anything. All the parts are filled out. That you the contract, because you can easily see when you're going through it if someone understands the contract or not. Having all the addendums, it's imperative to do that. And if it's a cash offer, having the proof of funds or your pre-approval letter. Again, me personally, I have lenders that reach out to me to talk about their buyers, but I go through and I call all of the lenders to make sure, like, hey, what does this file look like? Is it what are we looking for? Have you run documents? Is it or is it just that we need a house, or you still need to get the W-2s, pay stubs? I want to make sure that everything is verified. So when I'm sending it to my seller, I'm like, hey, I spoke to this guy. They've been they've been communicating with me. It's been amazing. I checked with I verified with the lender on this buyer to make so that it's as easy for them to make a decision, because I don't want that to happen where we go under contract and all of a sudden, financing fails. Now, granted, people lose their jobs all the time. So if that happens, absolutely, we understand. However, I want to make sure that I'm helping my clients and educating them on every single offer, so that we don't have to worry about that. We get that one contract accepted and can move forward.
That's awesome. Guys, here's the other thing. I still hear this in today's market. Hey, Deep, I'm calling about your property on ABC 123 Street. My buyer is going to offer you X amount of dollars. Go ahead and tell your seller and let me know what your seller wants to do.
Nope.
Hey, Deep, I appreciate you calling me. Go ahead and put that in. Well, I don't want to put it in writing in case. Well, listen, you have to submit that offer. I'm like, no, we submit offers in writing. Thanks for your time, Deep, but we're not submitting that at all. If you choose to write it up, fantastic. If you choose not to, there's no need for us to speak, because I'm not going to the seller with a verbal, period. Okay. Yep. Anything verbal is not contractual. Go ahead, Dee.
It's so true what you said. You nailed it, right? We forget the terms, and sometimes I get reminded that times are different, but times are not different. Situations are different. Circumstances are different. It's the same freaking business that I've been doing for 17 years. You cannot change how you drive. You got to go right, left, straight forward, escalation or brake. That's all there is. So we need to adjust to this. We need to connect. We need to make that extra effort. Yeah, it's challenging, but make that other extra effort calling Tom. Hey, Tom, I got a buyer. He's really interested, looking at multiple houses. How do I connect with him? It's not like, oh, what do I need to do to get this? Oh, am I going to pay more than this and more than that? And half the time, the buyers are not even educated enough. They have no clue what they're jumping into. Oh, we'll waive the inspection. I'm like, how do you do that? Like, why would you put your buyer at risk for something they have no idea you have no idea, because you're looking at a seller disclosure. You can't get shit out of the seller disclosure. The seller could lie on that disclosure, and knowing the listing agent, he didn't even check because he's so busy. He's waiting for this 20th offer. So it really comes down to his old school sitting down, what Curtis and Debbie said. It's like, educating them every step of the way. It doesn't matter what the market situation is, explaining them this is what inspection is. This is why we do inspection. We're looking at the bigger item. We're looking at the AC. We're looking at the roof. We're looking at the foundation. We're not looking at the GFI. That's going to cost you $18 to replace. Explain them how does the inspection report looks like. If somebody who's never read an inspection report will freak out, because every other paragraph says get a professional, this guy, the GC, or electrician with a license, and this, and it's always in red because they're trying to protect themselves. So be basic, put yourself in that situation. It's not that difficult.
No. Hey, I want to throw something at you guys, and I know this will be extremely helpful because I've helped many people with this as well in the last year or so. We list the property on Thursday. We present all offers on Sunday evening. The listing agent does an open house Saturday and Sunday. For what reason? They want to get a buyer, right? So Deep has a listing. I submit an offer. Hey, Deep, I got a question for you. If you get the buyer that's interested in purchasing the home and you represent the buyer, are you adjusting your commission down to represent buyer and seller? It is mandatory that they disclose that to you, because that's called a variable listing. If it's not in the MLS as a variable listing, they have to disclose that to you. So Deep, if you do a discount on your commission because you represent the seller and the buyer, I need to know that so my buyer has the same fair opportunity with their offer. And if they say, no, that's none of your business, say, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have to tell me. You have to disclose that. And if they say no, then, obviously you can take it a step further and call their broker. And that's what we did. And we got our agent's offer accepted because they were willing to give up commission, and our agent, the buyer, knew, so they came in a little bit higher to cover that difference, and they won. So don't ever be afraid to ask, hey, Deep, I know that you're going to have multiple offers. I'm submitting my offer. Are you representing any of the buyers? And if you do, will you be taking a reduction in commission for representing buyer and seller? Because I need to know that. It needs to be disclosed. I hope that helps you guys, because in today's market, the listing agents are doing it, and they're not gonna disclose it to you. So you gotta be able to ask that question. Mitch, go ahead, bud. I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to what the previous gentleman was mentioning in regards to the inspection. I found that it's very helpful when you're submitting offers to type in, not, completely eject the inspection, but I just put in buyer will not request any repairs from seller, which still gives me the ability to have an inspection. And I usually make it a very short inspection period because my inspector can get out there within a day or two. And at that point, the seller, because realistically what the seller wants is they don't want it to keep the house off the market for too long, and they don't want to give you any money. So if I go in there, I do an inspection and I have the conversation with my buyer, I tell my buyer, listen, it's either going to be a yes or a no. We're not going to ask for any money. That usually helps both parties, and it gets offers accepted in today's market.
Mitch, thank you for bringing that. I love that. So you're not asking for repairs. It's just what the buyer needs to be prepared for when they close, like Deep said, right? The other thing I'm going to throw out there to you guys, because I've been in court many times. I ran brokerages, so I've been in court many times. And I will tell you this right now, non-disclosure is just as bad as having your preferred home inspector, one preferred home inspector. Find 3 that can do it quickly and let the buyer choose one of those 3. If you do not, and after the closing, something happens, they can sue you and you'll be responsible. You know, we have E&O, but I want you to understand, don't use one home inspector. Give them a page with 3 on it, say circle 1. I'll call all 3 and see who can get to it the fastest for you. Give them an option. I promise you, you will end up in a lawsuit. It will happen. So be cautious of that. All right, Sherry.
Hey, I was just going to comment that the last gentleman that spoke about the repairs and not, asking for any, we had several contracts in New Mexico that came through and were very successful. I was the listing agent, and they basically wrote it to say, we're going to inspect, but we will not ask for any repairs so long as there are not major roof or foundation issues, which were big things out there due to hail and for settling with sand.
I love it. Yeah.
That was really good.
Thank you for filling that in, Sherry. So this is a huge aha for me, Mitch, by you bringing that up. I think that if we think about that as we're writing contracts, that may be a win for you guys when you're writing contracts. Buyer is not asking for any seller to repair anything. And like Sherry said, other than roof and foundation, if there's something structural.
Yeah, so when I write that into my offers, I put unless requested by lender. So if something comes up in the appraiser that they need, a hole in the wall fixed or something like that, because it's happened to me in the past where there was literally a hole in the wall and it just needed to be patched. And my buyer wasn't concerned about it, but the appraiser wasn't willing to move past it. That's what I put in the contract. So the seller's aware, well, we could back out of this if the appraiser says that, the roof needs to be repaired. Otherwise, we can't close on this property or something like that. Another
golden nugget. Thank you, Mitch. Your wife is amazing for coaching you. No, that's a great thing too, because unless required by lender like wood rot for VA, FHA, stuff like that there. So very good. I learned quite a few things on this call so far. It's open. Any questions, ahas, or successes you've had? Be the best co-broke you can be. Be nice. Even when you don't want to be nice. I have this thing where when I get overly frustrated, I bite my bottom lip. And it's got more scars on the inside than you can ever imagine. And as I'm on the phone, I just go, and I stay silent. And then I think about, what am I going to say that's going to make it worse, whether I'm right or not? Just be the best co-broke you can be, the kindest co-broke you can be, professional, and stick to the contract, okay? Don't bend on the law, obviously, but it's an ego thing. We get in the way of that. We get in the way of that. All we are is we're the mediators in the process. That's what we really are. So open. We have.
Hey, Tom. George here in Minnesota.
Hey, you do not look like a Heather.
I identify as a Heather.
Hey, but you do not look like a Heather. I've met you in person, and the name doesn't even fit you.
Philbeck rubbed off on me. I identify as a woman.
How are you, bud?
I am doing fantastic. How are you?
Well, thank you.
So you mentioned to ask the other agents, do you represent any of the offers? Are you taking the reduced commission? I've actually asked that here in Minnesota, and they have no clue what I'm talking about. I mean, it just blows me away that they're like, why would you ask that? I'm like, because it's in my client's best interest. I need to know.
That's right. And they may tell you it's none of your business, but it has to be disclosed. And you know what I would do? I would highly recommend that you probably send a text message and say, hey, by the way, Heather, are you representing any of the offers for the buyer and the seller? Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. Are you reducing your commission if you represent buyer and seller? So now you got a recording of it, right?
Yep.
And then you can go to the board and file a grievance against them, and it won't be good if they don't
Right.
cooperate with you. Now, certain states do not allow you to do dual agency, right? The word dual agency, we're transaction brokers here in Florida, which is great. We can represent buyer and seller as we don't represent either one when we represent the transaction. But some states really, honestly, I don't like to get both sides. I really don't. It is very, very, you can be in a really tough situation at times. But certain states, you can only represent the buyer or the seller. It's single agency. So in those cases, if you know those states, you don't have to worry about it. All right, 9 minutes. This is your call. Still have 58 people. I'm thankful that you guys took the time to invest in being on this call today. I hope you all learned. So I did. Mitch, that was a huge aha for me to share off expectations, the paying the title and doc stamps as a buyer to reduce the seller's expenses and raise their net, but not adjust sales price. Also writing in there, no repairs unless lender required. Guys, this was some great nuggets on this call, and I appreciate every one of you. So, Joseph, I see your, did you want to jump in on something? Your screen's highlighted, that's all. All right. Anyone else? Oh, go ahead, John.
Tom, I just had a question again about the reduction in commission on the variable net sale. Can you break that down a little bit more so that way I can understand the leverage on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure Rhode Island, Mass, and Connecticut, if they're all, you can represent buyer and seller, but here's the way it is, Joe. So I used to do.
There is dual agency, you can.
Okay, so when I used to do my listing agreement, I'd always go, my listing agreements are 4% and 7%. And I said, they always ask me, how do I have to pay 4%? And I said, well, if I represent you in the buyer, then it's 4%. If I only represent you, it's 7%, 4 to the listing agency and 3 to the buyer's agency. I always did 7%, guys. So if I did that, I have to put in my MLS that it's a variable commission, because if I represent the buyer, I'm willing to take 4%. Now, if you bring an offer, the disadvantage for you is now your buyer has to pay 3% more to even compete. That's the only difference. And that's a choice, but I have to disclose that to you. Okay. Yeah, read variable commission in your MLS. And it is not, you can ask the listing agent. If they give you a hard time about it, do it in a text so you can get them to tell you. Because this market right now, listing agents want to represent the buyer because it's an opportunity, but they have to do it fairly.
Yeah, I do use a VNS when I do work with my FSBOs, but I just wasn't sure how that was going to work to give you leverage as a buyer's agent. That's all.
Yeah. So if you're doing it with FSBOs and you do list that property and you have an agreement that you'll take less if you get a buyer and represent them, you have to disclose that to the other agency.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
Aletha had in the chat box, how does no representation play into this? Doesn't that help avoid dual? So within the Northeast Florida Association of Realtors, we have the option of putting in for if there's a non-rep that's bringing us something. And Aletha, to speak to that, a lot of times we will see.
They don't get paid.
Yeah. And I always typically for a non-rep put 0, because the majority of those people that are sending those as a non-rep are attorneys. their estates. So they're already getting paid because they are working for their client. So that's how the non-rep falls into there. I hope that answered your question. So please, I see the thumbs up. So if you need to add to it, Aletha, let us know.
And Karen teaches, she's a certified state real estate instructor as well. There's certain things that she would be able to bring to the table for sure, especially on this variable disclosing commission, non-representation, single agency buyer broker, and all that stuff there. I always highly recommend you be a transaction broker, but when you're working with buyers or sellers, you make sure you do it properly. That's all.
Hey, so I did want to bring one other thing up that I've used that have been very helpful, both on the listing side and on the buyer side. And I have what's called an offer cover sheet. I don't know if this has been discussed already or not. But realistically, all it is just it lets the buyer's agent gives them the opportunity to let me know exactly what's in their offer. So I'm not having to look through every single contract that's written my way. And when I'm submitting an offer, it also gives the listing agent a synopsis of what my offer is. And literally it's just numbered 1 through 16. It just says, the property address, buyer's agent's company, my name, phone number, email, offer date, and then all the buyer's information, including their loan officer. And then I have a comment section, which is where I'll put, the inspection period or any other thing, if there's any escalation clauses or anything like that. So they know exactly what's coming in that offer and they don't have to go through every single page of the contract to know what we're submitting.
I love that, Mitch. So he puts that together, an offer sheet. And, we talked a little bit about an email with the expectations of the offer. If Stephanie or you could put that into our workplace in the GPS under files, that would be great. Or even into this recording, just attach it in the comments. I do know that George also has one inside of the documents for our GPS. Okay. That is a great thing. And there's nothing better as a listing agent when you get an offer from someone that highlights everything for you. And then 2 other offers prior to that, you got someone that doesn't even fill in the contract properly. If it's not signed, initialed, and properly filled out, I don't present it. I just don't present it. We get too many other offers. I do let the agent know, hey, your contract is incomplete and it will not be presented. Your offer is incomplete and it will not be presented. Just don't. That's why you have to be fully prepared. Proof of funds, letter from the lender, all sellers disclosures, the contract, make sure it's very tight. So. All right, fantastic.
Liz has her hand up.
Oh, Liz, I didn't even see you up there.
No, you're fine, guys. And another tidbit, guys, just like being a buyer's agent too, is, I'm going to piggyback. I believe, I don't remember if it was Curtis or Debbie who talked about it, but when you're calling these listing agents to say, hey, do you have any other offers? Change the verbiage on that. It's just like, other than price, what is important to your seller? You know what I mean? To make sure that, make sure you do that, because sometimes it's not just price. Maybe they need a post occupancy. Maybe they need to be out within 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe it could be a short inspection period. You never know. And that, that conversation that I have with the agents, and it doesn't matter how many times you have to call them until they answer. That is their job. Their job is to sell that house for their client. So people are just like, wait, you got the listing agent on the phone? I'm like, yeah, because I called and called and called, and they're like, hey, Liz, we know you're eager for this. So, you've been doing everything that you could for your client. You wrote a clean offer. You asked me what was important to my client, and, it's as clean as a whistle. Like, we're going with you because we can see that you're willing to fight for your client. So just make sure you call these agents, guys, and get them on the phone. I promise you, you do that, you're going to win more offers.
100%. Now, also, Mitch, you put that up on the screen. Is there any way you can upload it into the chat box?
I can't. I was trying to upload it into the chat box and I couldn't. I mean, maybe it's because I'm on my phone. I thought that's what I was doing by sharing the content. I didn't mean to like cut Liz
Can you
off.
put it up? Can you put it up real quick again? And
Yeah.
Tiffany or Joe, can you do a screenshot of that and put it up on
Yeah.
our
I tried, but then he took it down so quick. I was like, dang it.
there you go. That's
Let me
awesome.
grab that real quick. Thank you. Doing so now. Bear with me. And I've got it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mitch. That's perfect. Nice job on that, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys, I'm out. It's 9:31. Have an amazing weekend. It was great to see. Oh, by the way, guys, today at 1 o'clock, I am doing if there's guests on this call, that's okay too. I'm doing an EXP exploratory call at 1 o'clock. You guys all have the link on our GPS page. It's all there. This is the purpose of the call. I'm muting everybody. Okay. It is a presentation about this amazing company. And if you bring a guest to this call, they're going to get all the things that they need to make the best decision for them and their family to move over to this company. Your responsibility will be to follow up with them immediately afterwards and say, hey, you ready to get started? Okay. I'm not going to put my link up there that says join EXP. That is your responsibility. I'm doing this as a group thing, and I highly expect that there's going to be a lot of people on the call. Okay. Do yourself a favor. Instead of trying to tell them about EXP, invite them to the call at 1 o'clock. It's on the GPS page, the master page. All you have to do is copy it, paste it, send it over, and let me do the work for you. Let me do the work for you. I was looking
Can I
at
make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, of course you
First of all,
can.
thank you. I'm glad George is not on the call. It's still getting recorded. Friday's always been my favorite call. I've been doing this for 17 years, and the amount of nuggets we got today's call, people should be shocked. And you normally you should be paying a couple of $1,000s for these kind of calls. Second of all, it's pretty sad to see around 65 people on this call, because our group has pretty close to 1,400 people. So you see the same people over and over who are producing in this in today's market, and who's going to last through the next big change that's coming. Second of all, the open door conversations you talked about 3 weeks ago, we put a listing in Winter Haven. That's like an hour and a half for me. Open Door bought the property. I went to the property twice, made $12,000. Got the highest dollar I could get from my client. There was no comps in that area. I was going to list the property at $369. Older roof, older home. Would have had issues with inspection. Would have had issues with insurance. Went to Open Door. Went to OfferPad. Open Door gave me $396. $12,000 commission for just handing out pictures. So thank you.
That is awesome. I'm hearing more and more stories when I speak about this. Guys, this is so darn real. I actually went on Facebook into my community page yesterday and said, the prices, the demand for our community is very high. Would you like a cash offer within 24 hours? Do you know how many responses I got? A lot. Can I bring them a cash offer within 24 hours? Can I bring them more than one? Yes. OfferPad, Open Door, Express Offers, guys. Put a thing out. Hey, would you like a cash offer? Would you consider looking at a cash offer if I brought it to you within 24 hours? Just put that on Facebook. If they're in, I don't know, if they're in another state, you can refer it out. Right? I mean, whatever. You cannot get paid from Open Door or OfferPad or Express Offers unless you're licensed in that particular state of that property. That's it. I had an agent say, I'm going to call for sale by owners across the country. I'm like, you can't. Because it works. Lyra got a $22,000 commission. I got a $14,000 commission. Deep has gotten one. Joe and Michelle Vero have gotten multiples last year. So it works, guys. It works. I get excited about that because what better way than if we don't have any business, why not call for sale by owners and bring them a cash offer? Why don't we send letters out to our community and say, would you consider accepting a cash offer on your property? Please let me know. It's all yours, Tiff and Joe.